You know, there's this bias that's all around us, but we barely talk about it. It's called ageism, and it's especially a problem in our professional lives. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on what's really happening with ageism in the workplace. We'll look at the hidden costs and, most importantly, lay out a clear plan to fight it.
All right, let's just jump right in with a number that is, honestly, it's pretty shocking. Get this. According to global data, 1 out of every 2 people hold ageist attitudes against older adults.
Yeah, you heard that right. Half the planet. This bias, it has a name, ageism. And the crazy thing is, it's one of the most socially acceptable, most tolerated forms of discrimination out there. And it is thriving in our workplaces, messing with people's careers, their well-being, and yeah, even a company's bottom line.
Okay, so if we're going to tackle this thing, we've got to understand it first, right? So let's kick things off by really defining this invisible barrier.
So, this term ageism, it was actually coined way back in 1969 by a guy named Dr. Robert N. Butler. And at its heart, it's pretty simple. It's any prejudice or discrimination against someone just because of their age. It all starts with these stereotypes that, end up creating some very real, very unfair disadvantages for people.
And this is super helpful for understanding how this whole thing works. It's like a 3-step process. First, you've got this stereotype. That's just a generalized belief, right? Like older workers can't keep up with new tech. Then, that stereotype can curdle into prejudice, which is the negative feeling or attitude you get from that belief. And finally, that prejudice leads to discrimination, the actual action, like not hiring somebody or passing them over for a project because of that initial faulty belief.
And this discrimination, well, it can show up in a couple of different ways. Sometimes it's just right there in your face, super direct, super obvious.
I mean, look at the tech industry. It's a perfect example. We've got research that shows even when people have amazing performance records, their promotions just start to plummet after the age of 36. That's not a feeling. That's a hard, data-driven example of direct bias at work.
But it's not always so personal, It isn't always just one manager making a bad call. Sometimes, ageism is baked right into the system itself. It's in the policies, it's in the company culture. That's what we call institutional ageism.
A classic example? Forced retirement policies. We see it all the time in the data. People over 50 are often pushed out of their jobs whether they want to leave or not, and completely regardless of how well they're doing. And the fallout from that is huge. It can be a real struggle for them to just maintain their income.
Right. So what's the big takeaway here? This is not some small niche problem. The impact is absolutely massive, and the costs, well, they are incredibly high. For people and for businesses. Let's dig into that.
Just look at this number. Worldwide, an estimated 6.3 million cases of depression are linked directly to ageism. That's just a staggering toll on people's mental health, and you can be sure that impact doesn't just stay at home, it comes right into the workplace.
And this chart here really shows you how it all connects. See, over a third of workers in these OECD countries are dealing with something called job strain. That's basically when the demands of your job totally outweigh the resources you have to do it. And ageism? It's a huge reason why. Just think about it. If you're constantly being overlooked for training, or if you feel like your career has a ceiling just because of your age, of course that's going to lead to frustration. It directly tanks your job satisfaction.
And yeah, that damage, it comes with a hefty price tag. In the EU alone, mental health issues at work cost the economy an incredible 260 billion euros every single year. And because ageism is such a major driver of that stress and anxiety at work, you better believe it's a huge part of that massive bill.
All right, so we've pretty much established that ageism is legal, it's harmful, it's costly, but the conversation's actually a little more nuanced than that. There are some very, very specific situations where age can be a factor. So let's get into those exceptions.
So that brings up a big question, right? Is it ever legally acceptable to consider someone's age in an employment decision? Well, the answer, maybe surprisingly, is yes, but only in some very specific cases. Yeah, these are called bona fide occupational qualifications. Big phrase, I know, we just call them BFOQs. And they basically only apply to jobs where your age is directly tied to safety or your ability to physically do the job. So we're talking about commercial pilots, for example. They have a mandatory retirement age of 65. Or air traffic controllers, federal firefighters because of the sheer physical demands. It's a really short, legally defined list of exceptions. Okay, now for what I think is the most important part of this whole conversation. What can we actually do about it? Let's start on the individual level, with a personal action plan for employees. Okay, 4 key things you can do. Number 1, champion inclusivity. If you hear an ageist joke or dismissive comment, speak up. Number 2, educate yourself and the people around you. Learn to spot the more subtle signs of bias. 3, if you're seeing a pattern, start documenting it. Then talk to your employer or HR, maybe even suggest things like sensitivity training. And finally, number 4, know your rights. In the US, for example, there are laws like the ADEA designed specifically to protect you.
But let's be real, the burden can't just be on the employees to fix this. Real, lasting change has to come from the top. So here's a playbook for the organizations and leaders out there.
You know, a really simple but incredibly powerful place to start is with language. Think about job descriptions. They are often packed with coded, ageist language. So instead of using a term like digital native, just say what you mean, proficient with modern software. Instead of asking for a recent graduate, describe the role for what it is, an entry-level position. It's all about focusing on the skills you need, not the age you're guessing at.
And it goes way beyond just language. Organizations really need to take 4 big steps. First, assess your own culture. Use anonymous surveys to get honest feedback on age bias. Second, you have to establish rock-solid anti-ageism policies with clear, safe ways for people to report issues. Third, educate everybody on staff with training that helps them spot and challenge their own stereotypes. And fourth, and this one is huge, actively promote intergenerational mentoring. Pair people up so they can share skills and learn from each other's perspectives.
And I really want to drive this point home. The goal here isn't just about dodging a lawsuit. It's about so much more than that. The evidence is absolutely overwhelming that teams with a mix of ages, intergenerational teams, are just better. They're more innovative, they're better at solving complex problems, and when things get tough, they're more resilient.
So I want to leave you with a challenge, just for this week. As you go about your day, what is one stereotype about age, could be about your own age, could be about someone else's, that you can consciously push back on or challenge? Because ultimately, changing the entire system, well, that starts with each of us challenging our own assumptions.